Tanshi, my name is Josh McKenna, and I live on the ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations in so-called Vancouver, BC. I'm Métis. My family's roots run deep in Treaty 1 territory of the Red River Valley in Manitoba. My family names include Carrier, Hamlin, Vandal, Parenteau, Landry, Laurence, McGilvery, and the unnamed Cree and Soto women that populate my family tree. Today, our guest is Elder Marjorie Beaucage. Elder Marjorie Beaucage is a Two-Spirit Métis Auntie, filmmaker, art-ivist, and educator, a land protector, and a water walker. Born in Vassar, Manitoba, to a large Métis family, Marjorie's life's work has been about creating social change, working to give people the tools for creating possibilities and right relations. She has been a grandmother for Walking with Our Sisters, the elder for Out Saskatoon, and the elder in residence for the University of Saskatchewan Student Union. As a current board member of Choke Cherry Studios, she is giving back to future artivists as they stand up for themselves and their community through creating art, music, and writing. She just finished 6 short harm reduction videos for creating possibilities of wellness with story medicine. Elder Marjorie.
Hi, Tanse, Josh. Good to be here. I'm here in the Duck Lake, Treaty 6 Métis homeland, in this house built by Gabriel Dumont's niece, Carolyn, 125 years ago. I'm originally from Manitoba, like you say, and I've been mostly in my writer's world lately because of the book that I made and Leave Some for the Birds, and I just came back from a festival and in French, Franco-Métis, that's me. That's my language, and so I got included in the Francophone part of the Winnipeg Festival.
Nice.
It was good. And I wrote this poem a couple of weeks ago for Jason Berg. He's an artist, and he did a show on water, and he asked me to name the show, and he also asked me to write a poem. So I did. And it kind of encompasses everything that I'm about these days. So I thought I would share it with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sikam Dilo. That's the name of Two-Spirit Tasti Inu in Michif, and we're dans le milieu. We are like the water.
Mm.
We are the in-between people, like the water, fluid and healing. We carry her love medicine, stacked wisdom in our DNA. Water, our first home, penetrating every pore, ebbing and flowing in the rhythm of life. Sparkling waters dancing, blessing you in the place called betweens. All my relations, yes, all my relations. The Parlement in Uncle Louis's vision, that place where stories were shared, where everyone was listened to, where caring decisions were made. That exchange, it goes both ways. These underground rivers, rivers of silence, where sacredness is buried, forgotten, where all the flavors of grief still connect us in the power of the blood. These frozen places deep down, ready for renewal, awaiting a love touch of water again and again. She cannot go backwards. The past is not past. The future is behind us. Water breaks the patterns, shatters phony promises, renews our purpose, awakens our dreams back to life, laying bare the wounds for healing. No need to hide, go backwards, lose connection. Hold up the mirror, reflect each other, feast each other down by the riverside. Remembering, uncovering stones, finding original blessings, staying alive, rehoming, bringing medicine, balancing the wheel, making spirits hold. Sipi we iniwak, we are river people once again, and it is time to be Otipimsawak, a people who own themselves. Okay, jike de monke, Marjorie Beaucage.
Love it. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
That's what it's about.
I think that kind of gives us a good jumping off point to hop into some of our topics here. Um, I really loved that whole allegory as like the two spirit people being like the water. So I was thinking that we could hop into two spirit as our first topic for the day. Um, so right off the bat, Marjorie, what does being two spirit mean to you?
Yeah, that's it's always evolving that whole idea because we came up with that name in the 1990s to
Mm.
distinguish ourselves from LGBTQ because we're not the same. Because what's the difference? The difference is spirit. It's a spiritual worldview, and we were reclaiming our place in the circle, coming back in with our gifts and to be acknowledged and recognized for what our medicine that we carry that can help the people. So the two is queer and indigenous, and the spirit is in a spiritual worldview. So it's like outside the colonial reference around gender and sexuality and everything else. And we want to go back to the pre-colonial place where there was no sin. It wasn't evil to be the way we are. It
Hmm.
recognition of our gift as helpers to help to balance the circle. What is we're in the middle. Tastawi Winyak means we're the middle beings. So, we hear the teaching about men on one side, women on the other, and everything is divided by the fire and the water and the moon and the sun and all those things. And I would always say, where's the place of two spirit in this picture? Because those are good teachings and I respect and honor them, but we also have a place. And I found that our place is on the diagonal. It was across all of that. When it's out of balance, like we stand in the middle, we help to balance. If the masculine and feminine principles are out of whack, then it's our job to provide that medicine to balance it again and make it whole, keep it together. That's our job. And so if they don't recognize our gifts, then the community is way out of whack and that those, you know, way out of balance. And so that's why I'm trying to make room because especially with now the young ones standing up and asking for their place in very strong, powerful ways and bending the gender binary in every way possible. They have so much courage and I have so much love and respect for them. And I want them to be able to just fully use and be who they are because our communities will be better for it.
Totally. And I think that's such an important thing to note too with what you said about two spirit people being that in between and keeping that balance. Because I think a lot about what we hear about the way that colonialism introduces patriarchy is that it throws up our balance because it introduces patriarchy where we would have had matriarchy in our communities. But it not only throws off the balance because it oppresses women, but it also oppresses two spirit people. And that is part of the balance in there as well, right? So I think that's an important thing to note, even when addressing what you were saying about those teachings where it's just talking about men and women, that patriarchy is not something that's only affecting the women, but also the two spirit people as well. And that's all something that colonialism is bringing in here.
Yeah, the whole thing has been like the women never had a place But you know what happened first is they saw the power that Two-Spirit had in the communities, and they got rid of us first, and then they got rid of the women's power, and or tried to, but they haven't succeeded.
Hmm.
But that's how it came. It went down, and now, um, because like it's like women, everything comes through the woman, you know. Water is life. We all came
Hmm.
through that water broke so we could be born out of our mother's wombs, everybody. And so that's the first power that we have, the life-giving power. And everything else comes out of that, everything. And
Hmm.
the Two-Spirit also have their own gifts and power on top of that that were used to enhance. They didn't take the place of women, they supported the women. And they were the midwives and the doulas and like they helped the children with orphans and they helped the grandmother they collect medicines and they were helpers, scapulas, that's our job. Whatever needed to be done, we did. And to support that life.
Hmm.
So it's like the men just tried to now take that power away from us. Like women didn't have a seat at the Métis table for a long time. The artists never did still, and the Two-Spirit don't either. And the youth are just tokenized. So it's like that power balance is still way out of whack in our communities and our politics too. And I mean, there's so many things going on that and the church still controls everything. And that's the
Hmm.
power for the Métis that our place was eroded by the church. And that judgment and silencing and everything that goes on because of the church uh, control means that youth are killing themselves and being abandoned, because they're Two-Spirit. So
Hmm.
have to rebalance that and get rid of that power that the church has. I mean, why is it that the Métis gathering at Batoche still starts with the Catholic Mass instead of a ceremony of pipe?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I've talked about on this show before too. I think Batoche is a great example of that sort of thing, where it is simultaneously one of the most impactful celebrations of culture that I've like ever experienced, but it is also incredibly infuriating in a lot of ways, with um, with the mass as well as the kind of big show of the RCMP there. It all seems to be very very oxymoronic to me in a way, you know.
And they had the Minister of Education, who just legislated against trans kids as a speaker, at that or at the opening, all these politicians and everything
Hmm.
who were hitting us like crazy.
Hmm. And it's like if you're going to do those types of things that are going to specifically target people in our communities, like Two Spirit people, you shouldn't be involved in our community events at all, in my opinion, at least.
We had a tent there last year. We brought it ourselves to make a safe place for the Two-Spirit. A big, huge 25-foot.
I saw the tent, yeah.
There is a whole, I mean, I'm an elder. I'm 77 years old, elderly, if
Hmm.
nothing else. But it's like, and I do a lot of work in the community with the youth all the time and as an artist and, always giving back my time and energy. I never get invited to elder things or do elder things in the Métis, arena. Like I'm on the margins.
Hmm.
It's That's fine. I've been on the margins all my life, but it's and being on the margins helps you see the bigger picture and see
Hmm.
what's. And I'm very critical and I do a lot of questioning and analysis of what's going on. And I urge people to do that all the time. That's sort of how I teach.
Hmm.
Like, um, And it just seems to me that domination, they don't want to rock the boat about, they don't want to change anything. You know, like the youth need guidance, they need ceremony, they need stories, they need to belong. And like if we can't offer them that, like a lot of elders just can't offer them that if they're two-spirit. And they reject that, you know, they reject that two-spiritness because they think it's evil and a sin, and that's still in their mind. And I'm thinking, how do you change their minds?
I think a large part of the way that you change minds in that way is simply by, being exposed to people like yourself, right? Like there's something that happens when you hear about like the most homophobic people who will be shut off to anybody who's on the 2S LGBTQ plus spectrum until finally someone in their life who they care about comes out. And then it's real, right? Like when it's just an idea and people are continually silenced and people like yourself are kept on the margins, it can stay an idea and you don't have to think logically about it because it's illogical to be homophobic. It's illogical to shut two-spirit people out of our communities and our circles. Like it doesn't make any sense if you actually think about it. And I think it is that kind of deep-rooted, kind of subconscious control that colonialism and the church has that just roots this in people for some reason, and they're not ready to think critically and let go of it.
No, and they don't see it as a gift, you know. Um, until, like you say, there's someone in their immediate circle. But it's like when we wanted to do events, like we would sit down with the elders or with the powwow committee or with different groups, and we shared our stories with them, and everybody gets listened to, and you know, we can make decisions that are caring and safe and for everybody. And to me, that's the parlement that Louis Riel was talking about. Parlement, parler, talk to each other, share your stories with each other. Those are the ways that we do heal, and that has always been our way. Visiting, right? And yet, when uh, there's so many people that just don't want to have that conversation. They're afraid of I don't know what.
Well, I think we should. Sorry, go ahead.
That's just the hard part is that I mean I'm just me, you know.
I think we should put one thing out there for people, though, to kind of like set the stage and clear the air, because I think there's so many people who kind of forget where we came from, and they think that because they're being exposed to uh, queer people and queer culture for the first time, that it's like this brand new thing that's just coming about, and it's almost they'll dismiss it as like a phase or something. That's just something that I don't know all the Zoomers are doing, but like let's get one thing straight, right? Like two-spirit people and queer people have always been a part of our communities, and you touched on that before. You were talking about the roles they had in our community, but I was wondering if you could speak to that a bit more, because I feel like so many people are starting like their basis for where our communities came from with when the teachings of the church started to become more prominent. But where were the two-spirit people and the queer people in our communities like since time immemorial? Like they were there, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember one elder asked me one time, "How come there's so many of you now?" And I said, "Oh, the community needs us because things are so out of balance." I said, "All the jobs we used to do, nobody is doing them." I said, like, you know, in terms of the community health is like, and the two-spirit used to be right in part of ceremony preparations, getting the Sundance pole, dancing on the ground before anybody even gathered on it. They used to go and get the medicines. They used to go out to the communities that were coming around and tell, this gathering is happening. This is what's going to happen. This is what you need to bring. These are the discussions. You know, they were like the ambassadors, the go-betweens between people. Like if people needed to come together and have a council because there were some decisions that needed to be made collectively, not by, you know, a few men up there, that they would gather the people and prepare them and do all that work, that groundwork of organizing basically community.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would, if they were traveling between one place and another and a woman was pregnant and she was going to have her baby, they would stay with her and have the baby, and when she was ready to travel again, they would rejoin the, bring her, you know, go and rejoin the camp. Or if someone died, they would be the ones that prepared the bodies for burial. If children were orphaned because of sickness or war or disease, whatever, that they would be the ones that would, they would give the children to the Two-Spirit to take care of. So a lot of us have adopted children along the way because of that. There's a, you know, we didn't just give them up to the system. They gave them to raise. There was so many responsibilities and roles, like to prepare and to take care of things, to make sure that everything was in balance. If there was family conflicts, we were the mediators. If there was, you know, a lot of mediation work, healing work, and if there was any violence or abuse or anything like that, we took care of it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing here, or sorry, go ahead.
We didn't have social workers, or, you know, I mean, we were like, in that sense, the social workers. We were like uh, in a much broader spiritual domain as well. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I'm hearing from what you're saying is um, that I'm kind of gathering from this is that if we are going to have any sort of actual like decolonial movement going forward, if we're going to pursue any form of indigenous liberation, we need to rebalance our communities. Like it's going to be crucial that we have Two-Spirit people and women in leadership roles and back in their proper positions in our communities where they can be uplifted, and that we can run things the way that they should be. And I was wondering, like, what do you think are some good tactics and techniques that we can use to ensure that when we are trying to move forward, that we're not inheriting these patriarchal colonial frameworks while we're resisting it, and how we can center our Two-Spirit kin in our movements going forward? Hmm.
Yeah.
It's called, and that's dividing people, you know. um, the government is, and then setting things up so we fight each other all the time, or, you know, there's all these different hierarchies of what's, and the money decides what's going to happen instead of us deciding what's going to happen and then asking for the money to do it. We don't decide together what we're going to do. We just look at what the government's willing to fund, and that's what we do. But so that's one thing that has to change, is that mentality around money and government, because the government still decides us. We don't self-govern.
Mm-hmm.
We are not Otipimsawak. The self-government is the hardest thing to do. And self-government for me is what I've been trying to live and teach the youth when I do camps and gatherings and stuff. And that means you have to respect everybody in the circle. And that means you can only talk for yourself and the ones behind you and the ones coming after you. And that means you're in relation, and that means you are responsible together. And it's not, and there's accountability that's built in there, not shaming and blaming and judging and all those competing and all those things that are dominating our relations right now. So that's what has to change, and that is what we can do. Like that's part of the medicine, the love medicine that we carry, is to help to make that different. But that takes time, and that takes the open, like the willingness to sit like that in the Parlement to govern ourselves that way.
Hmm. And I think that's a great example of having to do, like, properly engage with both our culture and politics, you know? And I think I totally agree with what you're saying about we are not self-governing and what we go where the funding goes. And, I'm all for uh, taking funding, taking whatever means you can, and doing with that what you can. But the thing is that all of our organized governments right now are so reliant on funding that we don't truly get to make our own decisions, right? Like it's like what Howard Adams says, even that we are in negotiations with colonial governments aren't an option because we are not in a place to negotiate. They will always be negotiating with the upper hand. Like we don't have really any leverage there.
Right now, what do? They're building billion-dollar, million-dollar buildings like at Portage and Maine in Winnipeg, the Bank of Montreal, and building at Batoche, that's like 5 million or more. And
Hmm.
it's, the what about the youth? What about building something for them that's, in the community? What about, like, there's so many other things that to me are more pressing than having this big building at Batoche or this museum at Portage and Maine that Métis that they don't even involve artists or other people from our community that know about those things to even do that. So it's all to me like the government give them money for buildings, or maybe they give them money and that's what they chose to do with it, but they didn't consult the people.
Hmm. And that's kind of dangerous, right? Because it's like it feels like we're just taking the money and then just trying to get a foot in on capitalism to just try and find our place to work within that system. And that's not how we govern. That's not how we've ever governed. Um, like we can take the money, but we have to invest it in actual acts of resistance, right?
Like maybe like supporting the youth, supporting the artists, supporting the women, because the women, you know, are are the ones that create culture, that pass it on, uh, not the men.
Hmm.
Well, I think you've been doing something that has been really relevant to cultural work. You've been doing these Two-Spirit culture camps. I remember you emailing me about them. I think you were just doing them last month, was it? Or the month prior?
Beginning of September, yeah. It's just what do people need to belong? They need that land connection. They need ceremony, and they need like a community, family. Those are the things that camp provides. We create they create a family with each other, a place to belong, to be seen as they are with no judgment, to feel safe, to have access to ceremony and to have access to the land and the water and get to know it and for the land to know you and the trees and the like we're right here on the river at like 1 mile from the ferry. That's where the land is that I have the camp and the lodge and everything, and it's so beautiful there. And our ancestors, that land is clean. It hasn't nothing's been built on it. It's just we just go and set up our camp and we take it away and they don't even know we've been there. Like it's not a big huge $1 million building. I mean, I don't even know if they'd let us use that building for our camp. But I don't want to anyway, but it's just like we just bring everything we need and we live like self-governing. We decide how how we're going to be together, and we do the things that people need to do for themselves. You're responsible for yourself and your needs, and learning how to be that way without an agenda and a schedule, and anybody telling you what to do is like it takes, and there's no cell phones or anything, so like they just have to be there and be in relation to themselves, the land, and each other. That's it. And that is so powerful. And within like they don't want to leave, it's and they could come back anytime. Like we don't just go for the camp. Like we're there for the full moon circles. We're there for, different things throughout the year. And then when it gets too cold, they come to my house here. But um yeah, because we don't have any place
Hmm.
that we together.
I also wanted to know what about the camps that you set up makes them specifically for Two-Spirit people?
Well, Two-Spirit, it's just the one coming together. You, this is like your chosen family because a lot of
Hmm.
them don't support, and it's intergenerational. So there's people of all ages, from like 10 to 80. Like there's and it's not just Two-Spirit, like they can bring their allies or families too. And like some of them come with their families, and some of them come just by themselves or their families drop them off. But what makes it Two-Spirit is just the fact that we are there being who we are
Hmm.
and connecting with each other as a family. Like when I started another creating your spiritual landscape, that was a project that I did last year with for like every month we got together and we used art and ceremony and land as the basis for, and it was Two-Spirit youth, and for them to create, what does your spiritual landscape look like? And at the end we have a show. We don't have any place to bring it yet, but we had a little art gallery space for about 2 days that we were able to have a little show. But we'd like to share it with people and show people what their Two-Spirit landscape looks like, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and spirit aside, it's so beautiful, beautiful. And I call them my little wolf pack because they came there as individuals. They didn't know each other, even most of them, and so they were like lone wolf. And then they found it, and then they found each other, and they became like a wolf pack. And they're so tight, and they're so family, and they get together all the time, even without any projects. Like when they had those northern lights that
Hmm.
were all went to the land up here. I didn't even know that. And they all went there and they were all huddled up, lying on the ground and looking at the northern lights and because they feel that space there is theirs. It's like they feel safe there. And so
Hmm.
they when I'm not around and I didn't even know they were there. I was watching, and it's like they've created this wolf pack. And when we made drums and we were learning songs and they wanted to make their own song. And I said, well, I don't know. If a song comes, we'll have to ask for it and see what happens. And so, and that morning when we were all drumming and singing, and they asked, and then the next morning, one of the youth came up with a song, woke up with a song, and it's our wolf song, our wolf pack song,
Nice.
and
Oh,
it
that's
sounds
awesome.
wolves running together. Hi, 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 hiya, hiya, hiya. And it just keeps going and going, and it just makes everybody feel so happy.
Hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. I think like there's definitely something to that, like I can't speak to it as I'm not Two-Spirit, but I can relate to the feeling because I think that there's really something about when you're in a space with just other Indigenous people, or even more specifically, like just other Métis people. There's a certain feeling that just allows you to let your guard down in a certain way, where you all know that you're at least somewhat on the same page, or at least have some similar experiences. That really just, yeah, just brings about like a really safe and welcoming space where you can kind of just open up in a different way, right? So, no, that's wonderful.
It's all like that in peer support groups, right? Whether like because you all have that shared experience of some, right, a culture or identity or abuse or like trauma, like
Mm-hmm.
there's an instant bond that occurs because you can just be and you don't have to explain yourself and you're accepted as you are. That's what it's all about. And as Métis, if we can't sit in that space as Two-Spirit, then you're missing that piece, right? Because we don't want to create ghettos. I mean, the youth want to be part, want their stories and experiences and everything valued just as much as the other stories and experiences and creations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On that note, before we move on to another topic here, I did have one more question for you about Two Spirit. Um, what do you think about when non-native people claim Two Spirit?
Well, how can they? Because it's about being in a spiritual worldview, but they don't understand what that means because they're not part of it. That indigenous worldview, that spiritual connection to everything, that relationship to everything, that is part of, that's why we had that spirit part in the Two-Spirit. It's not male and female. Like people misinterpret it and think Two-Spirit, you have two spirits, you're male and female, and so or somewhere in between or whatever. But it's really indigenous and queer in a spiritual worldview. I mean, there's a lot of queer indigenous folks that don't identify as Two-Spirit because they don't connect to that spiritual part of it either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think it's definitely important to have people like you putting those words out there and that education about it, um, because I think it can cause so much harm when people who are not a part of our communities try to kind of impose themselves upon it, right?
No, well, there's so many people trying to take things that aren't theirs.
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, because what we have is so precious. It doesn't mean you can't share in it. Like, because we have non-Two-Spirit people come to events and gatherings and stuff, and we don't discriminate. We never discriminate. People are always welcome in our circle, but you don't take it over, and you don't. You can participate, you can learn, but you're not. Uh, it's not yours. We're
Mm-hmm.
you. It's a gift, but you're not. It's not for you to take and go and be it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, on the topic of kind of like having these safe spaces, I thought we could pivot into harm reduction a bit here, because you've recently put together a series of short films for a project titled "Reducing the Harms of Colonialism." So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about this project.
Yeah. I was asked to make videos because that's what I do on this topic, and there's so many people when you hear harm reduction, what do you think about? Needle exchange, safe injection sites, or you know, keeping
Mm-hmm.
people alive and safe. And I thought, no, that's just that's another colonial way of looking at disease model, right? Like there's something wrong with you, and we got to fix it, or this is how we can fix it by giving you, keeping you alive. And I didn't want to go there because I that's not the way I look at people. And then I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, For these videos, I chose to find people that have been through the system and all of that and have come out on the other side. And I asked them one question, what got you through? And then I worked with that. And so each little one is like a portrait, but also a different angle because everybody's journey is different on
Mm-hmm.
what, and then also a systemic one on the politics of harm reduction with Jason. But um, so to me, harm reduction means treating each person, as a human being, and what do human beings really need? It's the same as everybody to belong, to be valued, to be respected, you know? And how, what's the door for each person, the door through and to finding that place is different. And like people make all kinds of rules about people who are using and or drinking or whatever, and they can't do this and they can't come in here, and there's some they can't be housed in this neighborhood. They have to be away from school grounds. They have to all these rules that are being made to treat this problem when they see
Mm-hmm.
people as a social problem and not as human beings with their needs and asking them what they need. Nobody asks them what they need. You know, when I go to prairie harm reduction, and I have a bag of sage that I picked, and I bring it there, it's gone within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
With the ceremony, who's going to offer it? Nobody, because they have this 4-day rule. I don't. And I say, okay, if you want to come in the lodge and you have been using or drinking, this is what will happen. You probably won't make it through. You'll probably get sick. Other people in the lodge will feel your energy and it may trigger them, and it will be hard for everybody in the lodge to deal with the energy that you're bringing in. Are you ready to take responsibility for the consequences of that? And then you can also, so if you come in, this could happen. And then you can also sit outside and be part of the ceremony, but not be in the lodge. So I give them the choice. I don't decide you can't come in. I will not decide for someone else who can come in. They're coming there because they need it. They're asking for it because they need it right now. So who am I to judge them and say they can't come in? We never, ever told other people what to do. Self-governance means self-governance. And how do you learn it? By being in relation and responsible for everybody, so that respect, but how you have to have that experience to know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time they choose not to come in, but if they do, we deal with it. And the lodge knows, and everybody knows in the lodge that that's how I work. So they also have a choice if they want to come in or not. I don't say you can't come in, but I'm saying, they know this person's coming in.
I love that. Yeah, I love that way of looking at ceremony. I mean, that I feel very similarly about that, you know. Like I don't engage in ceremony if I've been drinking or anything like that. I don't smudge if I've been drinking. I make that choice for myself, right? But I've also decided I'm never going to make that choice for someone else. Like if I'm smudging and someone asks to participate, I'm not going to tell them that they can't, you know. Um, like I think, you know, like you said, self-governance, I'll make that decision for myself. But I also think that sometimes when someone's struggling with something or they're struggling with some sort of substance or whatever, that sometimes might be when they need that sort of medicine most.
There's that cellular memory, that smell, that moment, like when you light the smudge, like people remember who they are. It is
Mm-hmm.
something that brings them back home to themselves. I've experienced that many times with the smudge in at Prairie Hammer with when people are using that um, it just connects them. It just connects them for that moment, and in that moment they can maybe remember themselves, and maybe that'll bring them for a little further on their journey.
Hmm. One thing I'm gathering from this is that a, a primary technique for harm reduction in general and reducing the harms of colonialism is ultimately offering people the tools to um, self-govern and reduce the harm themselves and make that choice, right?
That's the only way that it changes. I mean, every single person that I talk to, whatever trauma they had that brought them into that place, that dark place, they also had a choice at some point that they made, not somebody else. There's nobody that's been saved,
Mm-hmm.
by someone else on that journey of harm reduction. The tools that the society provides can keep them alive, but they don't make the choice. Like it's not connected to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.